We did it, Carrie. We showed up. We're
Did
here.
what?
We made it. We
You
made it.
lost track of time in the middle of a story.
Oh, be quiet. They
Wow.
didn't need to know that. They could have thought I was sitting here completely prepared.
You used
I
to
mean,
start halfway through the story. You would just remember you would just like go
uh,
live and then you'd be in the middle of a story.
I
Kind
like
of
that
like how you
idea.
end it now.
Yeah, I forget. Yeah, let's do
Like
that now.
that.
Let's just start the story. Start in media res.
I mean, why
Well,
not?
we dragged Chinazom Nwabueze. I almost got it right. Easy. Chinazom Nwabueze in to talk about Real Talk, which is a book he wrote about men's mental fitness and well-being, and tells stories that kind of guide some ideas and some premise and all that sort of thing.
We're going to
I
talk
think it's
about
up to
mental
you.
fitness as well as physical fitness and how it can help you to achieve success.
Yeah. And I think it's up to you to figure out the hard-hitting question. Can women also do this?
Hi, everyone. Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Kerry Gargone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show.
It was Wabgishig
I was
Rice
looking
for me
right at
today.
JB, the first lady, today. That was
I was looking at
interesting.
Wabgishig Rice. That's funny because we both looked at First Nation
First Nation
guests.
people, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're a show that's done maybe 9 or 10 or so guests from First Nation. I would say that's probably, out of our podcasting colleagues, probably the highest.
I like to see how much I can slice it. Like when I was like, I don't want to just have a chocolatier. I want to have like a black chocolatier or like a First Nation chocolatier.
Philip Ashley Ricks, he was so great.
So good. I just feel like there's always, there's always more diverse voices to be found if you look.
Speaking of wonderful voices, I have the sultry and dulcet tones of my own mother, Diane Brogan, calling
I love
in
your
from Vegas.
mom. Mom's the best.
Chloe, who sent along some delightful treats and treasures to you and has taught you some.
I still have some. Not the Scottish tablet though. My kid even liked the Scottish tablet, so that's gone.
Tablet should be illegal. It's so delicious. Leslie, hello, Leslie. Thank you again for your care package. Oh my gosh.
Provider of syrup
and garlic and I have so many things. The garlic.
And your dad. Do you know how lucky you are? My parents would like drop me off if I had a show at school or something. Good luck. We'll see you later.
My biological father.
And his wife, so your mother.
You could call him Sunny, but I heard everyone call him Chinazom. So, Chinazom Nwabueze's here. We're going to talk about Real Talk and all kinds of things. I think we got to drag him in. Hello, boss. Good morning. Hello to you.
Good morning, guys. Really great to be here. Happy Friday to everyone.
Yay.
I was just listening before I came on. It's like mental fitness can be done by everyone. So it's not just for men, even though I did.
Okay.
Oh, because we were hoping you'd have a follow-up book that was like for her. With like a pink cover, scented.
I sent a task to write a follow-up for kids. So my friend kids, and she said her daughters asked me, why didn't you write one for kids? And I was like, oh, okay, that's a good one. So that's my next project.
Oh, I do love that. We'll have to talk about what that's about. First, I guess we should talk about the thing itself.
Yeah. So we're teasing with some love because I think it's a marketing point and a perspective to say I'm gonna focus on men. There's a reason I think you kind of aim in that direction. You start to get that feeling that maybe men are a little less inclined to talk about their feelings. Talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about why we went in the direction we went.
Yeah, I think why I focused on men was exactly what you just said. I felt like men were less inclined to open up, to have the real talk. And there was a few things that happened in the media at the time. There was a guy called DJ Twitch who was on the Ellen show, and he'd committed suicide. And I remember that kind of hit me when I saw that. And I just started thinking, this guy seemed to have everything going well for him. And then all of a sudden this shock happened. And then it reminded me of, I'm now in my 40s, so I'm 46. And a few of my friends were now having mental breakdowns. And I was starting to think, why is it that men we seem to hit this roadblock when we get to that stage? So I decided that there's nothing there for men. So that's why I decided to focus that book to say, all right, it's not just for men, because I feel mental fitness is for everybody, but I felt like men were kind of not catered for because they seem to be having more struggles. So I thought, okay, how can I write something that speaks to men that they're actually going to pick up and read? And we'll kind of get that point across that your mental fitness is so important, especially with all the stuff that life's throwing at us now. You really need to start prioritizing it.
You don't even have to itemize the things that are happening to us now because, like, we all know it's one of the things I get the most annoyed about when you see a blog post and it's like, oh, well, with the pandemic and the tech layoffs and the blah. I'm like, yeah, we know, everybody knows.
Every time you don't need to tell me about how crazy and just the rapid change. It feels, I call it whitewater rafting. It just feels like you just get used to getting hit by the waves because that's what's happening now.
I think a lot of people had just taken, not even that they took mental fitness for granted. It was just like, it didn't matter. It was definitely not a thing they were going to discuss. Neither of my parents ever talked about mental health or mental fitness. If I went to therapy, like, that was fine, but they would never consider it.
Yeah.
So are you dealing with some generational stuff too, do you think? Or is it just a really pervasive attitude that men are supposed to just soldier on?
Definitely generational stuff, because I'm Gen X, and I think the baby boomers, they don't talk about anything to do with well-being. And then my generation, we were always kind of just suck it up, just get along with it. And I definitely feel, for me, a big thing was people didn't understand that your performance is linked to your well-being. And I always kind of realized that. And it wasn't until we had the pandemic, and not that I would wish the pandemic on anyone, but it kind of brought to the forefront that if your well-being is crap, you're not going to forget about performance. You're not going to, everything else goes out the window. And also what I find with men is I just became a dad. And when I became a dad, I started to question certain things that I was doing. I was like, where the hell did I get that from? And that kind of, the role you're supposed to play as a dad and the role you're supposed to show up as a man, I kind of feel like that's what sets you up for success. You're kind of just supposed to suck it up, get on with it, grit, And I just feel like society was already setting you up for success. And I know that was not the way I wanted to parent my son. And I also definitely wanted to change this narrative where you don't have to always show up like that. It's good to actually talk about your feelings and show your feelings. And it's good, you need to ask for help when you need help, not just soldier on and then all of a sudden something really bad happens.
You have a very supportive wife in Ijoma. She's very much the kind of person who is your number one cheerleader. She is very much the kind of person who, if you're feeling a little faltering, you're pushing up. But not everybody has that. One of the things I liked in the way that you wrote Real Talk is, now we have to put a pause. I hate when people write storybooks. I hate when people write these nice.
Ooh, like parables.
Parables. I lose. I once. This is such a name drop. I talked to Paulo Coelho, who wrote The Alchemist, and I said to him, "I never read your book," and he goes, "That's really funny." He goes, "Everyone falls over themselves to tell me how much my book changed their life." And you said you didn't read it. Why not? And I said, "Because parables, man. I hate parables." And he was just he was laughing so hard. That's how we became friends. Well, friendly. It's not like I help him move his couch. So this book has a parable theme. There's Max, there's Ishmael, there's Chico. And the whole kind of concept is that a bunch of fellas realize, oh no, things aren't as perfect as I thought. Yeah. And I have a question I want to layer a little back into Ijoma as well. Whose idea was it to say, let's make this like a parable and pull it across? I feel like this is her idea. This is how you can do it, Sonny. But tell me a little bit more about why you made the book the way you did.
So I'll start off with every good idea I have is from my wife. And yeah, it was definitely her idea. But I think it was actually from when I was fell into sports psychology or performance psychology. And when I tried to share stuff with Ijoma, I would always notice if I lost her concentration, then I'd be like, maybe I'm talking too theoretical. So I found when I started to bring stories, like real life stories, her eyes would be and then she'd be following along. So I was like, to me, that's where it kind of, I feel like I have to share a story and a real life story for people to get it, especially for men. I feel like if I come and start trying to preach to you or start lecturing to you of why you should do this, you're just going to switch off. So I found the stories were the best way of doing it. And for me, I always find, if somebody's sharing a story, I'm already bought in. And then I'm trying to see myself in the story and think, what can I take away from it? So that's where I decided that if I'm going to write this book, I want to share wisdom with you, but I've got to share it in a way that it's engaging and you're gonna stay with it. But I have to say, I can't believe you met Paulo Coelho, because I would have actually fallen over. The Alchemist is one of the books that literally changed my life. So
oh my God, please don't. You're making it so much worse. There'll be no living with him after this. Every show, it's like, oh yeah, one time I was having tapas with Liza Minnelli, And she gave me some advice that like really changed how I saw things. And even Richard Branson agreed like it was the best advice we ever got. I'm like, what? Shut up.
It's just an on-running joke that I've had such a weird and blessed life that I have the worst of the name drops. Okay, so and Carrie has actual questions, but I keep bothering and cutting myself in. I just realized.
Oh, for gosh sake, stop talking. Let the woman speak.
No, it's cool. The Liza Minnelli story is actually a great one if you want to like share it or whatever. No? Okay.
In the process of coaching and sort of taking this to the corporate world and that sort of a thing, how do you find people are responding or not responding to it? And kind of like, how do you bring this from guys doing this in their spare time to companies realizing that it would really benefit them to have a much more open dialogue about relationships and feelings?
So what has been an eye-opener for me is coaching through the pandemic, the amount of people that were willing to be vulnerable and willing to open up, guys, women. I just found like that situation brought a lot more vulnerability. And that's what really helps with coaching, where people are willing to be open and go below the surface and really talk about what was happening for them. And going through that, I just assumed that everybody's going to get it, that everybody needs coaching and it's a good thing. But in another job I do where I work as a consultant, trying to go into businesses to kind of tell them that you should give coaching to everyone, I was quite shocked to see the resistance. And I kind of call it now, since we've come out of the pandemic, people want to go back to the way things were before. And they want to forget that performance and well-being are linked. And they really expect people to just go back and just keep pushing and do what you were told. So I'm finding it's quite a struggle where it's almost like there's two camps. There's a camp who've lived through this and your eyes have been open and you've seen a different way of doing things. And you've seen that remote working works. In fact, some people posted better results. So they're like, I want that flexibility. I want to be able to take care of my well-being. Then there's another camp who are like, no, I need to see you. I need more control. I need you back to where it was before. And I really hope that we don't go back to where before. And I really hope that companies start to realize with the way things are changing, you cannot pretend that well-being is not linked to performance. Yeah.
Oh, hi, Deb. So while you're talking, I was just thinking that as much as there's a resistance to mental health and a kind of addressing those issues in the workplace, it's not actually that heavy a lift. Like if you look at some of the things you recommend, it's like you can start small, you can start simple and incorporate more self-awareness or mindfulness into your day-to-day life. And even the smaller changes, they can pave the way for greater success. Can you talk about some things people can do that at least might start them on the right path that aren't so very overwhelming?
I think, a great question. I think like you can start small, and the simple thing is just try and understand your emotional energy tank. So each day, intentionally thinking, what are the things that give me joy? And what are the things, so how am I going to carve that out into my day to make sure that I'm filling myself up with joy? And also keep tuning into, because for me, okay, I just became a dad for the second time. When I became a dad for the first time, I was doing things when I was younger, like certain sports activities, which I thought was giving me joy, but it actually wasn't giving me joy. And it took me 6 to 8 months of pain to realize, okay, that doesn't serve me anymore. So keep trying to tune into, does this thing still give you joy? And if not, be curious to try different things. And to me, that's a great starting point of just, I kind of call it movement. So what kind of movement do? You don't have to do sports. You can actually go out into nature, walking your dog, whatever it is. Try to start there. Moments are the biggest thing. So for me, trying to carve time out to spend with my kids or spend with my wife, but actually really be present and have the right energy there. That's something that really fills me up with joy. And then mindfulness, you don't have to sit cross-legged and meditate. Like literally for me, mindfulness is just giving yourself space from your thoughts so that you can actually engage and be present and fill yourself up with gratitude. And it just start with those simple things and then rest. As a parent, I can't tell you how rest is like it's like a super drug to get. So if you can get good quality rest, those are simple things you can just start with.
Oh my gosh, it was years before I got good quality rest. Ever since the last trimester with my first kid of 2, because I couldn't get comfortable then. So that was like a wash that whole last 3 months and then everything since. But you're right. I realized gosh, maybe like last year or the year before, I was really feeling good. And I thought, I wonder, what is this feeling? Like, what have I done that's different? It was sleep.
Yeah.
That's
Magic.
it.
Simple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was it.
Well, loaded team. So the thought I had in with regards to Real Talk is that this is a starting point for some people. Like if they get a chance to check out the book, they can start to see themselves in it. Maybe they'll start to say, "Oh, maybe I should look at this a little bit more." Before you had this book, how did you run your coaching business? How did you get people to want to talk? What was, what's the pitch basically to have someone sit down with you? I mean, I've seen you've done work on some of the coaching platforms and all that. What's kind of your differentiator from everybody else out there?
I think for me, it was like I always looked at the whole person, and I always wanted to understand. So I have this slogan, which I always say, there is no successful high performance without well-being. So I really wanted to understand, how do you define well-being? And like, so that the energy tank I always talk about, I always try to say, I find everybody knows what gives them joy. So I'm trying to work out, okay, what's your awareness of what gives you joy? How are you carving out time for it? And people always find, because especially when I'm working with professionals, they expect me to ask them questions about their work and how do they show up as a leader, executive presence, all that stuff. And I'm like, how much sleep are you getting? Who are your close social connections? How much time are you spending with them? How do you regulate your energy when you're home? Because those questions start to tell me really about you, the person, how you doing as a person. And then I start to understand your mindsets. So I think I always start from that point of view, and I've become more confident now asking those questions. But I think in the beginning, especially when I was working in the corporate space, I'd be a little bit nervous asking those questions, especially if I'm working with a senior executive or C-suite level. I'll be like, this guy's going to think I'm crazy asking him about how much sleep does he get or what's happening in his family life. But as I've become more confident, because I've started all the different people I've worked with, I was like, once we take care of you, the individual, and I start to show you that link between well-being and performance, then once we get to all the stuff you want to show up as a leader, that stuff's easy because that's the stuff you can do. But I need you to be able to make sure you're showing up as your best self. And that's where I really focus on in my coaching practice.
Deb, I hope you're not saying you're falling asleep now. I think what you're saying is sleep is good. And Dean says hustle culture is a scam, which I agree. But I'm thinking while you're talking that in a lot of businesses, like I was a lawyer kind of in my past life, and we did not, how to put it, we would kind of sneak out, like even at a normal time, like it'd be 6:30 and we're still kind of slinking out the door to go have a life because it was not something that was looked favorably upon. So what do you do to kind of counteract some of that programming we have, that having a life outside of work is bad for your career?
That's a great question. Because I remember I worked in investment banking, and I have a close friend who was a lawyer. And I actually remember seeing lawyers where a lot of the partners would have their PJs at work, and they would change into their PJs and be walking around the office. And I was like, that's such a bad example to be setting to all the other people coming there. You're like, you sleep, you're proud that you sleep in the office. And I'm working with someone now where they've been a lawyer, and it's quite hard to like change that mindset of in your head where leaving work early. Like if you're not staying past 7 or 8, if you've been doing that for 20 years and it was ingrained in you, you feel like something's wrong when you leave. So I feel like I'm now working with trying to understand what's really important to you now, and what, so I call work-life integration, where people really, they realize that their personal life is also quite important. So they now have to realize that this is how much I'm going to give to work, and this is how much I'm going to give to my personal life. So what you're going to give to work, just making sure that you make that count, and you don't start to feel guilty if you're going home before 6 o'clock or whatever time it is. And then you try to say, okay, I've given the best. This is also something else that's important that I want to go and do and focus on.
And it pays dividends, right? Like you do better work when you're well all
100%.
around.
Yeah, 100%. If you're not spending time with your loved ones, you're not resting, your personal life is not going well, it doesn't really matter how much you're hitting it out the park at work, it's still going to catch up with you that a big part of you is not doing well.
Well, we're both Irish, Chris and I, so we were also raised to just kind of cram all that stuff into a box and
Shove
ignore
it
it
all down.
for
Don't think about those
decades.
things. Just wait till you die. Hey, look who showed up! A certain famous non-cupcake maker.
Hey,
Hey, Johnny.
My
Johnny
favorite
runs Johnny
favorite
Cupcakes down in
fashion
Boston.
entrepreneur. And Deb says, can be
These are
tricky to
pretty
change your
tricky.
habits and help others accept you're making some changes. Actually, so Johnny, I think, is a great example of an entrepreneur who made a successful business up and still, he's got a beautiful family, talks about them, had a whole adoption journey, but also has a very successful business that he's chosen to keep and run instead of selling, even though he's been offered good money for it. So it's definitely a question of kind of intentionally approaching life in a holistic way. Oh, I miss you. Let's go for dinner. Let's have cupcakes. I know you don't make them. It's
We'll
all right.
set plans with the
Cupcakes for dinner.
Sorry, something just popped into my head as well, is redefining what success means to you. And until recently, until I met my wife, I always felt like you couldn't be successful and enjoy your personal life as well. I always felt like it had to be one or the other. And since coming over to the US, I kind of realized once you define what success means to you, you can have both. You can be successful, and because it's up to you to be intentional about, okay, how much time am I going to spend in one sector and how much time am I going to spend in the personal? So that's, I think, a big part for helping to change those habits, is to you define what success means and then you work towards that, instead of some society telling you what it is and then you're just constantly chasing like a hamster in a wheel, running to that.
It's got to be quite a challenge, though, because I mean, like you said, you came from the world of finance. That's not a lifestyle in which people are like, your perfect home life is the goal, right? Like all the markers are pointing in one direction, and you said maybe not, And I know that it certainly helped to have a partner who stressed that for you. And in a lot of cases, though, there are people who are navigating kind of blind. How do you, what are even the first steps of starting to think that through and realize that maybe you don't have to bring your pajamas to work?
That's a great question. And also, I don't want to trivialize and make it that it's not difficult, because if I was still in investment banking and I didn't have pajama, I'm not sure that I'd have been able to make the transitions that I did make. But I think it is tough if you're in a tough environment. So if I was still in investment banking and I was trying to answer this question for you, I would soon start to realize ask myself the questions, what are important to me? So there was a question, I don't want to be morbid, but if you think on your deathbed, what are you really going to care about? And then that was when I started to realize, well, I'm not going to bring my PJ into work, because on my deathbed, I'm not really going to care that I spent all my time, in this place of work. I would give it as much time as I could. I think that trying to answer that question, what's important to you, so that even if you are in a stressful environment where investment banking or law, you can decide slowly how to manage and give what you can give while you're in that environment, and make sure it doesn't impact your personal life too much. But if you don't define what's important to you, then you'll just keep chasing the promotion, and then you might find yourself with the PJs sleeping in the office all the time. And yeah.
It's like Johnny Cupcakes just says here, I don't need a ton of stores. Success to me is being able to eat cheese and watch SVU with my wife.
Dun, dun.
Dun, dun. Dean Shaw says, I have found that working from home has blurred the lines between work and life and made balancing the two more difficult. That must be something you're addressing a lot in your work.
Yeah, definitely. It's a big thing as well, because we're always on our phones and we're always on our computer. And I know my wife's I'm not going to throw her under the bus, but it's trying to switch off is very hard, because especially if you're doing work that you find really passionate about, your brain's always thinking about it. And then, so when you leave your work and you go upstairs, you can still be working going back on your phone. So what I always try to do was, and this is not easy if you're living in a 1-bedroom apartment, because I worked for someone who was doing this, and it's quite hard where your computer is next to your TV. But if you can kind of separate and segregate it as much as possible, so that once you finish work, you close your computer and it's on somewhere else, so that because I find the brain, every time it keeps looking at it, it will just all of a sudden go back to a problem and kick in. So there has to be a way of separating work from the personal, and also a routine or activity that you do. For me, it's go for a walk before my son gets home, or go and do some exercise, so that it's that part of the day is over, you're now going into a new part, and try your best to try and switch off and be as present as you can in that new part, so that you're not constantly working. Easier said than done. I'm not going to say that.
My workspace is in my bedroom, because I have a teenager who needs The other works.
Needs more space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the one thing I do that's, right near itself is I can do work and I can play games right in the same
That sounded
spot.
bad, by the way. I'm not like a cam girl. Like I have a job. I'm like a work from home job. I just,
Yeah.
it happens. The space.
You
for
look
my
at that lighting and tell me you're not.
Shut up.
Chinazom, I have a question about how this has all kind of evolved. And it sort of relates to what Dean had said about working from home, blurring those lines. There's a really weird propaganda campaign going out there right now for companies trying to get people to come back to the office because they feel like it would be better for everybody to get back in there for a lot of reasons. And the real reason is that it's just easier to manage if there's people right there. The actual value is that, pickup games of thought and strategy and ideas happen so much better if everyone's in the same room for those ideas. But I think that the question I have is with regards to guiding people on those kinds of choices, and that must be coming up in your coaching. What's your take on where this should go? Give us like a future view.
Future view. So I'm going to try and not be biased because I'm a parent, so I obviously love the flexibility of working from home. But some people who I've coached, especially if we go to the UK, where I'm from, where you don't have that much space. So a lot of people were quite happy to get back into the office because they're like, there wasn't enough space to have home offices. And I won't lie, going into the office for certain activities. So once a quarter, we had like, a retreat where you get to meet everyone. I think when it's particular activities, it is great to meet up with everyone. It is great to just brainstorm and have ideas. But I feel like people should still have that flexibility to choose what works for them. And you shouldn't be penalized just because you're not in the office. And then all of a sudden there's some information that you're not aware of. So future view for me is like, when you're saying you're having a hybrid meeting, there's enough technology now for you to actually make it hybrid so that the people who are not there don't get left behind. And I think that we should also be organizing events at least once a month, at least once a quarter, once a month if possible, to give people who are working from home that flexibility to come and feel part of the team and kind of gel and connect with people. And a future view for me is I'm just also thinking about to help blur the lines. You showed me your, I think it's a computer game that you play. So I now have like a ping pong table here. I have a basketball, just because I find like from time to time, I need to just have a break and just go and do something different to just make me feel like, okay, it's not because you're at home. So something that just helps keep your mind stimulated. Otherwise you just feel like you're in the same space again and again. And also something I'm going to practice is just for once in a while going out, finding a coffee shop or WeWork or something to just go to give you that change of scenery.
So there's something to that. The whole like change is as good as a rest. Like get yourself out somewhere else.
Yeah, I think, because I think as much as working from home is good, it's also somewhere where you spend all your time. So I still feel like you do need to have that change of scenery, that kind of stimulation from other places.
I have a feeling I know who's going to be person of the day today.
Oh, that's a really good comment. We have to talk about that.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
It's a toss-up because I would want to give it to Johnny, but Johnny's been by here and Johnny's been a guest a couple times, and we're going to make him do it again. But I want to give it to a Johnny. Supported, and I think she should be our person of the day.
I think she should come on the show.
I think she should come on the show. A strong strategy background. She's got all kinds of help in trying to move programs and process.
Yeah, like we've talked to George Clooney. Let's get them all.
We'll get husband and wife kind of program in here. Listen, your person of the day, it entitles you to a free apple. You just have to go to a store, buy it, and just eat it with abandon.
Wash it first.
Oh yeah, wash it.
I would bake it into a tartlet.
We have come to the part of the show where we have to ask the same question that we've asked every single guest that we've ever had on here. Everyone from Santa Claus himself, actually the Claus family, to my favorite, Horacio Garcia Rojas, an actor who was in one of my favorite shows where he played Elvis Infante. Mm-hmm. This question is, what goes in your backpack? This could be something physical, like an avocado. It could be something metaphorical, like hope for the future. Carrie, what's something physical you could put in a backpack?
Extra set of teeth. DJ Cumberbund on YouTube said extra set of teeth.
You never know when you're going to need an extra set.
He's a wrestling fan, so I feel like there's like it's situational.
There's got to be some reason.
Yeah.
How about something metaphorical? What could you throw?
Oh,
in a backpack.
kindness. Ariel Helvetica, burlesque performer, said kindness goes in the backpack.
Still pretty active there on the Instagrams. How about you, Chinazom Nwabueze? What are we going to throw in the backpack today?
So something physical would be my massage gun. There's this thing called a Terra gun. It's just it brings so much release after energy and after I've got back problems. So it just gives you some release, and I'll take it everywhere with me. But metaphorical, if you can get them in a backpack, I'd have to take my kids with me because I find they're the things that fill me up with joy, and they also have changed my whole perspective on life. I've found strength in places that I didn't even know existed, and I would definitely take them along with me. And because the future that I'm dreaming about is to have this mental fitness revolution, and I just feel like having my kids there, they'll keep spurring me on wherever I go.
You just need like a Bjorn in the front and like a backpack in the back, and you can have both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lord knows there's been times I've wanted to throw my kids in a bag, but that's usually after
Shut up.